back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I'm going through all the sets, picking out the best ones for the Commander format, and I'm finishing off the Urza Saga block today with Urza's Destiny. This really is a fantastic block overall for the Commander format. Lots of great cards. As usual, I got to give a couple of honorable mentions here, like Aura Thief. Really funny, interesting card in a Commander game. When it dies, you gain control of all enchantments. This is a really neat card. Also a great answer in mono blue for just dealing with enchantments, because blue can tend to have an issue with that. Metal Worker, of course, I think I gotta give a mention. One of the best mana dorks ever created in Magic. I would say it's pretty niche though, only really fits in an artifact theme. It's also a really expensive card, so you don't really see it much in the Commander format, but certainly is powerful. Elvish Piper, a great card that, again, powerful effect, only fits in the specific strategies. I suppose there's a lot of cards on this list that do fit in specific strategies, but I tend to stick to the ones that we're going to see more and have more wide use. So starting out at number 10, Bubbling Muck. 1 black mana sorcery. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps a swamp for mana, that player adds an additional black. So High Tide is a card that a lot of people are aware of. It's essentially the blue version of this card. Bubbling Muck is a lot less popular, although it does essentially the same thing, and it is a really great card in a lot of decks, obviously more so in a mono black deck. Just a fantastic ritual effect where I cast it for 1 black mana, and then for the rest of the turn, all my swamps are tapping for double mana. Not a super flashy card, but obviously it fits in a lot of decks, and it is really great in a Commander game if you want to go off on a certain turn. Coming in at number 9, a really interesting card, Repercussion. 1 red enchantment. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. And this card has a very powerful effect, obviously. It does seem pretty niche, but there is a few different ways to use it. Obviously, because it is a universal effect, it's going to be affecting all players. You do have to be careful here, right? This can be used just as a creature hate card in general, so you're not really playing any creatures. You're sort of hating on creature strategies. You just throw this down, and whenever your opponent's creatures are taking damage in any way, shape, or form, that damage is also being done to the controller. This can really close out a game fast. Obviously, casting a Blasphemous Act will deal 13 damage to everyone's creatures, and then will likely kill the controllers of those creatures themselves. It is kind of a niche card, I guess, but it's really, really powerful and does see play in the format, so I had to put it on this list. Coming in at number 8, Compost. 1 and a green enchantment. Whenever a black card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may draw a card. So again, this is a little niche, but in a different sort of way, because of course, your opponents have to be playing black cards in order for you to be able to use it. Now, of course, drawing cards is something every deck wants to do. I've talked about this card quite a bit on my channel. I talked about it a long time ago in a video that I did where I talked about cards that are color specific, so it depends on what your opponents are playing, but it's worth it to play it regardless, because of course, black is a really popular color in the format. In fact, it's likely the most popular color in the entire format. The chances you sit down at a table and your opponents aren't playing black is incredibly rare, so this is likely never going to be a dead card in a Commander game, and it can be incredible. The upside here is huge. This is a black card being put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, which means if they have a black creature and it dies, it's going to go to the graveyard. That's a black card going into a graveyard from anywhere. If your opponent even just cast a spell and that spell happens to be black, it's gonna go to the graveyard after it resolves, and you're gonna draw a card. Again, the wording is really important here. This is a black card. This is an incredible draw engine. If you have at least one opponent playing black, if you got a couple, it just gets better from there, right? I've actually got this card in my Dragonlord Dromoka deck because that's sort of what the deck is built around. I got Painter's Servant in there, and I turn everything black, so anytime an opponent has a card essentially going to the graveyard, I'm going to be beginning to draw off of it. So even though it is color specific, I think that black is a popular enough color in the format that you could put this in your deck and you're definitely going to get some use out of it. Next up, we got Pattern of Rebirth. 3 and a green, enchantment, aura, enchant creature. When enchanted creature dies, that creature's controller may search their library for a creature card. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So this is taking a creature directly out of your deck and putting it onto the battlefield. Used to be a way more popular card in the format. I used to see this all the time. Don't see it nearly as much anymore. It's really, really easy to abuse this, obviously. You're just putting it on any creature, and then if you have any sack outlet, you're good to go. It can also be a great way to prevent your opponents from killing your creatures, right? You can put this on your commander just to prevent your opponents from killing your commander, because then you just go get another creature out of your library and put it into play. There's lots of different ways to use this card. It's a fantastic one, obviously, because of the tutor option here. Putting any creature from your library directly onto the battlefield, of course, is great in any commander game. And there's also some really interesting ways to abuse this card as well. Fantastic commander card. Coming in at number 6, Replenish. 3 and a white sorcery. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So another card that obviously is archetype specific, but I had to put it higher on this list for a couple of reasons. First of all, it was the first card ever to do this. It really is the only card that does exactly this still, just returning all your enchantments, nobody else's, from your graveyard directly to play. We have a suspended version of this now, which is not quite as good. Also, though, Enchantment Tribal is just such a popular archetype in the format. Of course, for that reason, this card sees a ton of play. And if you're in an Enchantment Tribal deck, there really isn't a lot of better options than this that you want to be putting in your deck, because the big thing that you have to be concerned about is that blowout, right? Someone destroys all enchantments. They cast that Bane of Progress. All your enchantments get destroyed. This is just 4 mana. Get them all directly back into play. That seems really, really good, right? So again, even though it is niche, it's been a commander staple since forever and will continue to be so. Next up, a card that isn't really niche at all, Yavimaya Elder. 1 green human druid. When Yavimaya Elder dies, you may search your library for 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle, and you can pay 2, sacrifice Yavimaya Elder to draw a card. I really love this creature. I love value-y creatures, and this is the most value-y creature maybe ever printed. This is such fantastic card advantage, on top of the fact that you have a creature, right? I got a creature, I can put it into play, I can block with it, I can get it back out of my graveyard if I have some sort of recursion. Ability stapled on creatures are always great, especially when those abilities are sacrificing themselves, right? This is a great way to put a creature into your graveyard, for example. If you want more creatures in your graveyard, if your Yavimaya Elder just dies, maybe you chump with it or something, and you don't have the option of using that sacrifice ability, this is still a creature that is going to get you 2 basic lands out of your deck. That's pretty good. If you can be able to use the sacrifice ability, now you get to draw a card as well. So for 1 creature, you're getting 3 cards in hand. That seems pretty fantastic to me. Just a great value-y creature. I don't see this nearly enough in the format, I don't think. I think it's a great option just for getting lands or getting card advantage. Coming in at number 4, Yavimaya Hollow. Legendary land, tap, add 1 colorless, or pay a green and tap, regenerate target creature. This is one of my favorite lands, maybe of all time. Unfortunately, like a lot of cards on this list, it is kind of expensive, but this is one of those cards that you could put in any deck. Obviously, it's got to be green, but other than that, you really could throw this in any green deck and it's going to be doing lots of work for you. Regenerating, I think, is super underrated in the format. It's a very old ability. They haven't reprinted it in a long, long time, so a lot of people maybe don't understand how it works exactly. It essentially protects against destroy and damage effects, right? That's why when you see something like a Wrath of God, it says destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated, because with a regenerate effect, normally you would, right? If my opponent is playing a Day of Judgment, that doesn't have that wording on it, so now I can regenerate my creature. My opponent casts a Day of Judgment, I respond by paying the green and tapping my land to regenerate my commander, and then my commander sticks around. It's not the best way ever to protect your stuff, because of course there are other ways to kill a creature that is being regenerated, but the fact that it's stapled on a land makes it so easy to include in your commander deck. Having protection for your commander or any other creature in your deck stapled on a land is really, really handy. So if you have an option to run out and grab one of these, you should. Next up, coming in at number 3, Attrition. 1 black enchantment. Pay 1 black and sacrifice a creature, destroy target non-black creature. Again, another card that was wildly popular in the format when I first started playing, and I don't see it that much anymore. It is a great sack outlet if you're in that theme. It's also just great for destroying creatures, obviously. I don't love the non-black part. I say all the time about cards that destroy non-black creatures. We do have a lot of great options for destroying creatures in black now that don't say that phrase, so I tend to lean away from those. But this is a situation where I would make an exception because A, it fits fantastically in that sacrifice theme, or even in just that I'm creating tokens theme. I have fodder to feed to my attrition, and also obviously it's an enchantment. It sticks around, it's sitting on the battlefield, and this card, if you've seen it in play, sort of feels like an aura shards, right? I compare these two cards because for me they have a similar feel where when they are on the table, they sort of act like stacks effects in a way where your opponents just aren't going to play those things, right? If you have an aura shards in play, you're just not going to play artifacts or enchantments because you know they're just going to end up getting destroyed. And if your opponent has an attrition on the battlefield, you're just not going to play your non-black creatures because you know it's just going to get destroyed right away. So it almost acts like your opponent can't cast these kind of spells type of effect. I mean, they can if they want to just get it destroyed, right? Why is someone going to play their non-black commander into an attrition when it can just be easily destroyed and then they got to recast it again? That doesn't seem great. So this really can be a powerful effect in a commander game, but has lost a lot of popularity. So I would encourage people to give a second look at it. Coming in at number 2, Thran Dynamo, 4 mana artifact, tap, add 3 colorless mana. I'm sure everyone is familiar with this one. It has been one of the most popular mana rocks in the format for a long time. Again, has lost a little bit of popularity. I still think it's pretty fantastic. Obviously, it gets better in the less colors you are playing, right? Adding the 3 colorless mana isn't super great if you're like in a 3 or 4 color deck because you're likely going to want colored mana there. In 2 color or even monocolor decks, it gets really good because the colorless mana is going to be a lot more versatile or usable for you. Just a really fantastic mana rock. Not much to say about it. 4 mana comes into play. You can use it immediately. Still one of the best mana rocks in the format, I think. But coming in at number 1 for me is Academy Rector. And again, this is kind of a niche card, I guess, but the effect is so powerful that I think I gotta put it at number 1. 3 and a white human cleric, 1/2. When Academy Rector dies, you may exile it. If you do, search your library for an enchantment card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Urza's Saga block, for whatever reason, had a lot of these cards that are cheating stuff directly into play. If you look at the whole block, there is a lot of cards that are doing this. One of the reasons why this block was so busted and still gets used in a lot of different formats for this reason, right? This card gets used in a lot of formats for the reason that is such a powerful effect. And obviously there's a lot of really busted enchantments out there that you can get with this. Not a difficult card to use at all. You can go get any enchantment out of your deck, put it directly into play. All you have to do is have your Academy Rector die, which is not difficult at all. Again, might seem a little niche where, yeah, I probably want to play this in an enchantment tribal deck, sure, but it can get used in so many other strategies. I can just put this in any deck because every deck is going to have enchantments, and I can go get my Rhystic Study, I can go get my Smothering Tithe, I can go get my Omniscience, I guess. A lot of people like to do that. Or I can go get that combo piece that I want, right? The certain enchantment that is a combo with my commander or something else. But again, it sort of fits that same mentality as Pattern of Rebirth or Attrition, where it prevents your opponents from doing things, right? If your opponent has an Academy Rector on the battlefield, you're probably not going to attack them, right? Because they will be happy to chump your creature with their Academy Rector. So in a funny, weird way, an Academy Rector almost becomes a pillow fort effect where when I cast it, now nobody wants to attack me because I just throw my Academy Rector very happily in the way. It's funny how sometimes cards work out giving you that added bonus that you're not even really looking for with them. Obviously a really powerful card in Commander and in the history of Magic all around, and has been used a ton of different ways in a ton of different decks. Commander staple for sure. I thought it was a good spot to put it at number 1. But what do you guys think? What is the best card from Urza's Destiny for the Commander format? Are there any cards I could have talked about here that I didn't mention at all? I'm sure there was. Again, this entire block is fantastic for the Commander format. Lots of great cards that get used all the time. And if you are thinking of purchasing any of the cards that I talked about in this video or any other video, I have a TCG Player link. It is in the description below. Feel free to give it a click. It helps support the channel. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.